there, Jenny. Thank you very much for joining me. And welcome everyone to How Can I Afford to Rightsize? It's great to have our expert with us. So it's lovely to have you all online and appreciate your time and effort to be here today at the workshop. And our best wishes to you and your family and friends' health and safety at this time. I'd like to run through the disclaimer, which I have to do before every webinar and podcast. So Belinda makes no representation and gives no warranty as to the accuracy of the preceding information and does not accept any responsibility for any errors or inaccuracies in or omissions from the information contained herein, whether negligent or otherwise, and shall not be liable for any loss or damage howsoever arising as a result of any person acting or refraining from acting in reliance on any information contained herein. No listener, workshop attendee shall rely solely on the information contained in this, as it does not purport to be comprehensive or to render specific advice. The disclaimer does not purport to exclude any warranties implied by law which may not be lawfully excluded. The workshop, which includes any resources supplied as well, is only for the use of the intended recipients and is confidential and or privileged. Belinda shall not be liable for any errors, omissions, viruses, loss and or damage arising from using, opening or transmitting this workshop. Without further ado, welcome Jenny. Thank you very much for coming along today.
No problem.
So Jenny is a director, financial advisor, at Retire by Design. So as an experienced and certified financial planner, Jenny is committed to providing her clients with quality, straightforward advice and the highest levels of customer service. She is passionate about helping clients set and achieve their unique retirement lifestyle and financial goals and partnering with them throughout various retirement planning stages. So definitely retires by design. So we'll hear a lot more from Jenny today. And of course, you're Belinda Woolrich. I'm here, downsizing expert, speaker and author. So advisor and expert, and I receive positive feedback from clients with these workshops and speaking and information that we talk about in this right-sizing demographic. And have completed a lot of downsizing projects. So certainly have a lot of experience to draw on for people in this situation. Moving on to the workshop topics, what will we cover today? So what will we learn? I've got 5 major headings coming up. So the first one being, why would you think about right-sizing now? How can I afford to right-size? And how much does it cost to right-size? What does a great financial planner do? And wouldn't my accountant do that? So what's the difference between the two? I often have a few questions on that from our clients. And top tips for doing the right size and getting your financial freedom. Alrighty, first topic. Jenny, why would you think about right sizing right now in this particular tricky time?
Yeah, I mean, better now than a few weeks ago when you weren't able to attend open houses and things like that. But yeah, the market is always relative. So most people do need to, at some point, look at the family home to try and fund their future retirement or lifestyle needs. And it is relative. The market is relative. So although it's can be a little bit unpredictable at times, if you're leaving the market and entering the market at the same point in time, it's relative. So I can't see any reason why, if you do need to do it and the timing is right for you, that there'd be any issue in this current market with doing the right size now.
And that often comes up, and it's something that I talked about in my book too. And of course, Jenny, you contributed to that book. That it is, for me, it is all about what you just said. Is it the right time right now for that individual? So we wouldn't want them to feel any pressures coming from outside or being concerned about the market because of that changeover. Cost is all relative. And definitely the more important thing is to do it when it's right for them.
That's right.
And of course, a bit earlier is always good rather than leaving it too late.
That's right. At least it's being ready to go, ready to push the button. If for some reason, at that time that you're ready to go, it's not right, at least you're ready to go. So when you are ready to move a little bit further down the track, your house is ready, your photos are ready, you can just press go at that later time if for some reason like COVID coming again and no open houses, you can just push it down the track and you're ready to go. You've got all your house ready, you've got your finances in order, and you're ready to go.
Definitely. And I guess also if you see that dream property comes up,
Right.
and that's the other thing, it's not going to pass you by too.
Yes, that's right. Right.
Topic number 2. So how do I know if I can afford a right size? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this one is very close to my heart. So knowing whether you can afford to is really about, I guess, part of the research and planning that should happen at the very, very beginning, or throughout your planning for retirement or at whatever stage you're at when you're doing the right size. So it's sitting down with your team, with your group of people, and knowing that, you're doing the research and having a look at, what you need, where you're going to go to, what you're going to get, and what needs to be sort of left behind if that is part of the goal, is to release some funds along the way. So yeah, this is definitely the time where you're dealing with one of the largest financial assets that you'll have in your life. So it's the time, if you're ever going to engage experts, to be doing it at this point in time, where you would sit down and do some modelling and have a look at what is associated with the actual right size. Most people are moving from the larger home into a smaller home. So generally the costs are at least negative, but usually neutral. But most of the time we're able to release some capital in there as well to be able to invest. So it's allocating in that process as well for any costs. So it's for getting the house ready, it's for real estate agents, it's also for stamp duty if that's applicable, and things along those lines.
Right. The team of experts that you're referring to, can you elaborate a little bit more on those?
Obviously it would require, if there's things, to be your real estate agent, someone like yourself, Belinda, who is able to come in with a fresh set of eyes and look at your property to see what needs to be done in order to prepare it to optimise for sale. And of course, financial planner. So that you've kind of got a team of experts around you who do this all the time, who can actually be able to give you an estimate on your house, and a fresh set of eyes to see what needs to be done. And from my perspective, or financial planner's perspective, sort of let you know what you would need to release, and what you can afford to buy for in order to meet all of your future goals. And sometimes it's also family members, trusted family members as well. It's a big process. So it's just having who you need to have around you. I'm often dealing with clients' children, family, friends, or powers of attorney, just people that you trust to help be part of the team throughout this process.
And then, of course, probably another one that jumps to mind would be someone who can read and interpret retirement living contracts, or wherever the next property will be.
That's right. Especially, so obviously if you're looking to buy, there's conveyancing, etc. If you're going into a retirement village or something along those lines, they're all very different contractual arrangements. So when you're at that point where you're looking at the actual properties to purchase, you would need expert legal advice to make sure that you know what you're signing up for and what you're getting into, and how to get out of it if you need to, what the conditions are of the new purchase.
So the big values are the sale price, and necessary to know that fairly early on, or at least an estimation, so you can get a valuer, not necessarily a real estate agent at that point, but get a valuation completed. And then obviously the costs of the transaction and where you're going to. And then what other things might be in those future goals? Is it holidays? Is it upgrading a car?
So usually I sit down with clients and try and work out what their regular costs of living are. So for example, I know there's a general guide that's been provided by ASIC that gets updated from time to time, and for a couple what they need to live to have a modest sort of retirement is around that $60,000 per annum. But it does vary. So I have some couples that can live on 40,000. I have others that need 80,000 plus. So we need to sit down and have a look at, well, what does a comfortable regular income mean to you? Then there's also usually big ticket items, especially if you've been restricted with cash flow because of the house for some time. People often have plans to buy a car or go on a holiday, or there may be that things need to happen to the house before they sell it to get the best out of the price. So we sit down and have a look at the one-offs and then the regular income, and then try to estimate future one-offs as well. If we're going to upgrade the car now, perhaps you might need to upgrade it again in 8 years' time. So we need to make sure that we factor in all of these ongoing and one-off lump sum costs into the future, and then that gives us an idea of what we need to have left over. And of course, it's also then looking at, well, can we factor in some Centrelink in there? Is there any strategies that we need to look at in there to be able to maximise Centrelink? And sometimes that even means upsizing the home. So it might be downsizing in size, but it might be a home that's worth more in value in order to optimise Centrelink. So it really depends on clients' goals and what they're wanting to achieve, but it's really important to have that planning so you know what you can sort of set your sights on for the next step.
No surprises, and we're still, not being financially strained.
That's right. And it's also, then having at least a high level discussion about where you're going to invest anything that's left over. So there's some amazing incentives that have become available, I guess, through the government has recognised that, downsizers have had restrictions in being able to get their surplus proceeds into super in previous years. So now, there's the ability to pop sort of 300,000 as an individual and 600,000 as a couple into super as a result of a downsize if you're over age pension age without having to meet a work test. So there's things like that, looking at, well, where is that going to go, and how's my money going to be managed post downsize? That can be discussed beforehand, so you've got a bit of an idea. It makes the process a little less daunting, knowing what's likely, how things are going to work afterwards.
Yes, most definitely. Talking about getting the property ready, how much does it cost to right size? So this is something that I think that we can probably both talk about. But as far as the cost, there's costs in getting the property ready, but there's also costs from a financial planning perspective. So can you tell me from your point of view, Jenny, what are the costs that you feel are involved in conveyancing, your planning and those sorts of things? What should they be aware of?
So conveyancing does vary a little bit, but I usually budget for around $2,500 currently. So one being for the sale of your home, and then again for the purchase of the new home. So I guess in total, if you popped sort of 5,000-ish aside for legal costs, that's usually sufficient. But obviously, you could get finer detail through getting some chatting to your lawyer. Then there's also obviously real estate agent costs, which do vary depending on stock on the market. It can be a bit more competitive when there's less stock on the market. But as a guide, you can usually estimate there's going to be somewhere between about 1.8 and 2% of the sale price. I usually suggest to people to make sure when they're signing those contracts to find out whether that's inclusive of GST or on top, but that should be 1.8 to 2% inclusive of GST in this current market. And there's usually marketing costs as well, so that are separate to that are and often upfront costs. And that varies wildly depending on whether you want to have full page spreads in magazines like we used to in the Manly Daily, or whether you're happy to have mostly online sort of marketing. But I usually would estimate an average of at least 6,000. Some people go a little bit higher, and if your property's more exclusive as well, you might want to access some of those high-end magazines, so you may need to budget a little bit more.
And they do change for premium ads and which suburbs you're in and so on. So there's some quite significant differences online. But you're right, everyone needs to be doing the online marketing
That's right.
It's
That is
essential.
definitely the way the buyers are making most of their inquiries is these days is online.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I need to be guided by people like yourself and real estate agents, etc., as to what it's not my area of expertise and what needs to be done to the house to get the most out of it. So I usually would send clients back to people like yourself to get an expectation so that we can factor that into the pre-sale. And then, of course, once we're looking at, well, what's available and what needs to be left over for the new purchase, it's also factoring in any moving costs, if someone's relocating in particular, and also stamp duty.
Yes.
If that's applicable.
And so onto those and breaking down those costs a little bit further. So as far as the actual property, I can say they generally fit into two buckets. So it's what do I need to get out of this place? And that's not a presentation cost as such. And then there's how can I make this property sell for more? What cosmetic changes can I do? So it's really up to the individual circumstance as far as how much stuff they have at home, how much clutter. The garden always needs to appear well presented, well looked after, well maintained, and it has to be stayed on top of as well. So then once it's brought up to scratch, it will require regular maintenance. How is my furniture? Do I need to invest in furniture hire, or what have I got already? And we've got another webinar coming up very soon on furniture hire and how that all works. Normal costs really in a pre-sale are around cleaning, removal of items, painting, sometimes flooring. Sometimes flooring hasn't been put down for a good 15, 20 years, so that's going to be involved. And painting and flooring are generally the more expensive ones. And then, of course, furniture hire on top. And then rubbish removal and the actual moving costs that you were talking about. In my book, I do talk about items that are generally done and are popular things to get a property ready. And an average of around that 30 to 50 is probably quite realistic in preparing a large family home. So certainly you can read more on that. The other thing I was thinking for a cost of a right size may well be a buyer's agent. So for someone that doesn't enjoy going and looking at property and know how much to spend and doesn't have access to all the off-market properties, it may be something that a right-sizer might want to consider if they're looking at going outside of a village, for example, or aged care, but into another home, a smaller home. A buyer's agent can be of great value. So talking about great value, what does a great financial planner do, Jenny? And could you also cover the differences in a financial planner's role and an accountant? Because I often hear as financial planners are probably like buyer's agents, they haven't been around for a long, long time. So this demographic is very used to the traditional role of an accountant and often haven't heard of or have never used a financial planner. So why would they do that?
Sure. Okay. Well, firstly, what I feel a good financial planner will do is really understand, learn, and get to understand your goals and your needs that are specific individually to yourself. It's not a cookie cutout process. It's really trying to understand what's important. So that takes a bit of a process. It also takes a bit of trust building and often people, when you ask them what's important to you, have no idea. So it's really trying to delve into, well, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? And what new hobbies are you looking at? And how that's going to translate into financial goals, really. And it can be quite daunting. So it's making sure that people feel comfortable with it, being able to ask questions, that no question is a silly question. I often find people can be sometimes intimidated to ask questions because it's not an area that they're familiar with. So it's just making sure that your financial planner makes you feel really comfortable to be able to partner with you. It's not really meant to be a dominant relationship. It's meant to be a partnership, where more like a coach, so that you feel as though you can ask any questions and that you're working together to achieve your goals. Yeah, the financial planning is, I guess, a relatively new profession, and it's a profession that has had its ups and downs. I'm hoping that it's now heading more towards being a recognised profession as such, with some of the more recent changes post Royal Commission, etc. So it's evolving, but as a result of that evolving, there is more of a distinction between accountants and financial planners that has occurred. So even as of a few years ago, accountants are now not able to give financial planning advice unless they've met certain education requirements. So there are some accountants out there that have got those, but most don't. So their role is definitely looking at the financials, the tax, the legal tax sort of side of your situation, whereas the financial advising does have to be registered tax as well, but not specific. It's more holistic, it's more coaching, it's more being an expert on Centrelink and making the longevity of your funds and the investment markets. So it's a very, very different relationship than an accountant. An accountant will often do your tax return and be able to advise you on tax law, but they won't go so far as to say, well, how's that meeting your goals and what holidays do you have planned? And also then delving into your estate planning to think, well, what sort of goals do you have along as far as when you leave this earth? So it's and making sure that everything is set up for you to meet those goals. So it's definitely, I think, more of a nurturing sort of relationship and coaching relationship than that of the accountant.
So we would see you more often than an accountant?
Yeah, especially over these type of trigger points. So when I can have clients come and see me for years leading up to retirement, through retirement, etc. And there's these trigger points along the way. So obviously when you go to retire from work and you're moving your finances, receiving inheritances, and downsizing is one of those trigger points where it's a bit more high touch. You need to have had conversations leading up to it and over that period of time, because obviously the conversations prior to sale are based on assumptions and estimates, and then we actually get the sale price, and then usually people haven't bought yet, so then there's what are we buying. So it's a high touch period through the actual downsize.
Absolutely. Okay. And that's I guess that's what a great financial planner does. So you'd be looking for someone who can educate, someone who can partner, someone who can coach along the way, someone that you're happy with on a level collaborative relationship. Don't expect to be told what to do by a financial planner. It's something that you've got to be talking through. And then, of course, all of your information will be accessible. Well, not all of it, sorry. I'll say that again. You will be aware of the accountant and their information, but not necessarily working on that, and vice versa.
That's right. That's right. So I work with accountants quite a lot where there's tax implications, etc. When it's dealing with the sale of the family home, it's a capital gains tax exempt asset. So there's not a lot of tax sort of implications, I guess. There's tax implications with what happens with the proceeds. So often, if there's a lot of funds there, which then leads to a tax sort of implications, we would have to deal with the accountant at that point in time. But a lot of the time there's quite a lot of concessions for people who are pension age from a tax perspective. So and if super and allocated pensions, which are all tax free, are involved, often there's no tax in retirement. So not always needed to actually speak with the accountant at this point of the transactions, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm sure accountants do offer to help, and I certainly have had clients where the accountants have said, no, don't worry, I can do that for you. And I've always said, very different role. So whereas traditionally a downsizer has only ever used an accountant, now you actually need both.
Yes.
And it should be a good partnership, the three ways.
That's right. And it is good to have more than one set of eyes looking at things as well. Even when there's no tax implications, often my clients want to sort of take the statement of advice and sort of run it past the accountant, which I'm completely fine with. So sometimes I've even had accountants come in with clients, and it's whatever your circle of trust is, I guess, to help you feel comfortable is what suits.
Excellent. All right. Well, now wrapping up for the top tips of doing the right size and your financial freedom and questions. So there's our top Ds are combined from Jenny and myself. The first one is, I think, read the book. Jenny, you spoke. Yours was a really comprehensive section and well written, I must say. So the section in Rightsize Your Home, the Empty Nester's Guide to a Stress-Free Downsize. So Jenny's got a big part there in chapter 2, and it covers a lot of these things that we've talked about, but in more depth. Number 2, so choose your planner well. I believe don't do anything without one. Something we didn't mention before, and Jenny, you could probably fill in a little bit more here, is that financial planners often have specialist areas. So there may be some financial planners that deal in younger demographic. They're happy to take more risk. They've got more income to work with, and they've got a different strategy and different goals in their short to medium term.
Yes.
And then you specifically, your business is Retire by Design. So could you speak a little bit more about the different niches out there and yours?
Sure. So so there's a lot of holistic financial planners out there that tend to say that they do everything, and there are some that just say, look, my speciality is life insurance or wealth generation, which is younger people, and then there are others who, like myself, are retirement specialists. So I do think it's very important that you check that out with your financial planner beforehand. What are their areas of expertise, just to make sure you're going to the right place. And if someone is a generalist, so they do a bit of everything, just making sure that they're up to speed on things like Centrelink, and also even things like aged care, because if it's a long-term relationship that you're having with someone and you're in retirement, you want to make sure that later in retirement, when you're looking at home care packages potentially and things like that, that you've partnered with the right person who's going to be able to help you through all the various stages ahead.
We want them to be experts in that, not having to read up every time you come in and have established relationships with those providers and so on. So yeah, definitely. So I think it's important to choose the right one that's in the right niche, and not to try and make these huge financial steps by yourself. Number 3. So Jenny, talk to me about number 3 there, seeing one early.
Yeah, so I think the earlier the better. And I've had, for example, getting the money into super post downsize, you've got 90 days after settlement to get the money into super. I've had people come in to have a chat, they've downsized, they've come in to have a chat for the first time, and we've got 10 days to turn things around to get money into super, or people who've missed out. Things also, gifting is mentioned there. So I have clients who are hoping to, gift to their children, usually to help them get into the market as part of the downsize. So it's understanding sort of the gifting rules and what that means, and it's not waiting too late, because you've kind of got a 5-year period with Centrelink where that gifting may impact on any pension that you get. So just planning early, not leaving it too late in the process is a good idea. And I think a lot of people put it off, even just starting the process, because there's a lot to think of. So it's just starting the conversations as early as possible, so when the timing comes, it's not too daunting. You really have already thought about things and had discussions early on in the piece.
And that's a really sad point there, someone missing out on that payment. Yeah. So even more important to make sure you've got someone on your team in this financial space. Understand arrangements of contracts of when and where you are going. So tell me more about that.
Well, yeah, this is particularly important when we're considering places like retirement villages. So the contracts out there vary quite considerably. Traditionally, it's more of a 99-year lease arrangement. So you pay entry contribution to go in, and there's deferred acquisition costs that, if you were to leave, they're usually up to a 30% of the entry contribution, and there's no share in capital gains. So, the growth on the value is not part of what you're buying, you're participating in. But there are some more modern retirement village contracts, for example, where you actually pay stamp duty going in. You have a share in capital gains. You'll generally pay a little bit more of an entry contribution into those, but it's just understanding what it is, making sure you understand what it is that you're getting into. It's also making sure that you're understanding of what the break costs are and what services along the way. If you want to get a handyman in, is that going to be provided by the village, or is that something I have to arrange? So it's understanding all of the nitty-gritty is really important. Unless if someone actually goes through the contract, things could go missed.
Yes, great. Well, they're excellent top tips. Thank you very much, Jenny. And if you want to get in touch with Jenny, feel free to send me an email and I can certainly pass the details on. So Jenny has some outstanding knowledge in this area, and certainly we've worked together for a number of years. The next webinar is coming up. I'm sure you'll find them very useful. And this one's been fantastic. So I appreciate your time, Jenny. So stay tuned for more exciting content. And many of our workshop questions that are here are also discussed deeper in the book. Like I said, Jenny had quite a fair bit in there and really comprehensive. So you can certainly order the book. So send us an email at info@belindawoolrich.com, or you can buy the book, buy the ebook, and you can also book an online virtual appraisal, and with that you receive a free ebook as well from the website. Upcoming workshops are how do you get your furniture hire and what happens, how much is it, how does it all work, and why would you do it? Then we've got some decluttering challenges coming up as well over the next few weeks. So just register for the events at the workshop. And some closing notes here. Thank you, and thank you very much, Jenny, for coming on board. We certainly really enjoyed talking to you. It's been great. Once you believe in yourself, understand you're doing the right thing, the project becomes purely a logistical process. And of course, with all the right people involved.
Great.
Thank you, Jenny, and I'll look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Okay, thanks, Belinda.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
And of course, as always, if you want to speak with any of our guest specialists that come onto the webinar and podcast, please feel free to email us, info@belindawoolrich.com, and we can put you in touch and answer some questions for you.